Hello, and welcome to the Bright Centrist YouTube channel. This is meant to be an introduction video for the channel, give you a little bit about myself and the type of things that I like to talk about, where I sit politically. It's meant to be a channel focused on politics, world events, maybe a little bit of history in there. But anyways, let's get to it. So about me, first of all, I've gone by Bright on the internet since late 2009, early 2010, mostly for gaming, as I've done some gaming related streams and content, but I haven't done anything online, at least in the politics segment. I did grow up with a very big interest in history and government and politics and economics, world events, and that is what I went to college for. I did drop out after about a year and a half, so I didn't end up getting a degree in that. And then I didn't go into anything involving history or politics afterward. I've just tried to always keep myself decently well informed and up to date. I've had quite a few discussions online on things like Reddit, internet forums, and whatnot. And I mostly sit with kind of a centrist point of view. And I feel like there's not a lot out there of that for content creators and media personalities on Twitter, Reddit, etc., you usually see kind of a more extreme, like a farther left or a farther right. And there's not that much for people, even though I feel like there is a lot of people in the middle. I think you would say, honestly, a majority of Americans fall kind of in the middle of like moderate left to moderate right, and somewhere in between that. But for some reason, it seems like my sweet paint graphic shows, that what is going on out there? Well, it seems like, yeah, a lot of the left is kind of being radical, and a lot of the right has been pretty radical in some of their ideas and things they're saying. And it's leading to a lot of divisiveness in the political spectrum. And I feel like if that could get toned down and brought back toward the middle, where there's compromise, empathy, compassion, or even just a willingness to hear each other out and your point of views, I think that would be much better for society and much better for the world. And so my goal is to become a content creator that shares my views, analyzes different things. Maybe I'll react to certain things. I'll have video clips or events that are happening and my thoughts on them. And I can just kind of go over that from at least my point of view, which has always been kind of more in the center, with a little bit, a couple of views maybe on the farther left and maybe a view or two that goes a little farther right. But for the most part, I'm going to line up pretty middle of the road. Anyways, a little bit more about me. So, like I said, I was big into history and government growing up. I attended college for it. Currently, and for the last, I don't know, 15 years maybe, I've been working in agriculture, only part-time right now, looking for something new, but haven't found it yet. But we'll see where that leads me. I am 36 years old. I graduated high school in 2007. I have a wife, two kids, and two dogs. I live in the Midwest in a pretty rural area, so there's quite a bit of conservatism around here, but I do feel like a lot of the conservatism around here isn't necessarily that radical, which is kind of nice. Most people are pretty reasonable and easy to get along with. So, anyways, going with the idea that it seems like more and more people have moved far left or far right, the reason for that, for the most part, is because the media biases have just continued to push people to not really be into unity, to kind of be against each other, less agreeable. And so I've got a clip that I'm going to share. This clip is from one of the podcasts that Bill Burr's on. He's somebody I listen to quite a bit. He's also, I would consider, a centrist for sure. He's a comedian, but he has some views that are pretty liberal, and he has some that are a little more on the right. But overall, he loves to call out just the bullshit, for a lack of a better word, that the media, the mainstream media, does to people and how it profits off of that and makes views and money off that. So, anyways, without further ado, here's the clip for that. I'll play it out.
Seeing as how
Um,
this show made CNN last week.
Oh
how
yeah,
fucking
Radar.
gross was that? That those
I can even
fucking
get a clip of
assholes
it.
on CNN sat around acting like they actually were confused or surprised by the reaction that people don't like CEOs, and then them sitting there like they were going to get down to the bottom of it. It's like these CEOs are behaving the way they are because guys like you are not doing your job because you're not journalists on CNN or Fox.
No.
You're not. You guys are treasonous people who are sucking the corporate cock and you're fucking looking the other way. And then when, like, you know, an athlete says something or a fucking soap opera star tweets something or some regular guy hoards hand sanitizer in their fucking garage, you act like that's the reason the country's going to shit. But meanwhile, you can still charge $600 for a pill when you got leukemia. Go fuck yourselves. CNN and Fox News.
So anyways, there's that clip. And I really feel like he kind of hits the nail on the head there, right? Like, it's the two largest, or two of the largest, for sure the right-wing largest media outlet, and one of the largest, if not the largest, on the left. They're there to please their advertisers. They're there to get views. They don't care if they try and turn you against each other, or if they tell only part of the story instead of the full story. Your anger and outrage is their product. You're their product. You're their product to their advertisers. And if making you angry or upset, even if it's not at the right thing, gets them views, they have no problem with that. They're not going to call out the person writing them their paychecks. They're not going to call out, you know, their own political candidates as often as they should. They're going to spin things so that one side looks good and the other side looks bad. But anyways, so along with that craziness, a lot of people who sit kind of center or independent, I feel like the easiest thing to do is to just ignore it, to ignore, you know, what's going on in the world, to ignore world events, because you might feel like you're not getting a rational or a logical explanation with all the facts from easy to watch media outlets. And we're all busy people, you know. So many Americans don't have time to fully research topics or to find out if what their news is telling them, or their media or their newspaper or the internet, if what it's telling you is all the facts or if it's just a partial story. But a lot of people just don't have time for that, which is why my goal kind of with this channel is to make things more easy to digest. Some of it I'll be doing plenty of research, or it's topics I know or that are close to me or that are important, and I'll try to be looking things over, and I'm going to do my best to not put spin on it or to have it as propaganda or whatnot. But hopefully in 10 to 15 minutes, I can go over a topic, share my views and my thoughts on it. Whether you agree or disagree, that's fine. I just think it's important that the discussion is had, rather than just ignoring it because it's so much crazy out there. As long as the discussion is had, maybe, just maybe, we can get back to being reasonable people and voting in some quality candidates that are actually going to represent the people instead of represent business interests. I think when you sit down with people and you talk to them and get to know them, if you don't learn their politics, you might think somebody's a good person. And then you find out their politics and suddenly you're like, oh, well, I don't know about that guy. But that shouldn't be how it is, because honestly, I think a lot of people are way more similar than you think, no matter which side of the political spectrum you're on. And probably a lot of people line up toward the middle. All right, so I have a piece I wanted to put into this intro prior to going into the political spectrum. I think it's important if you're a centrist or an independent, or you claim to be on both sides, to be able to say both good and bad things of the different presidencies. So I'm going to cover the last two quick. I'll start with Trump, since he was 2016, came before Biden. So good things I think Donald Trump did. He inherited a good economy from Obama, yes, but he kept it rolling strong. He had good job creation. Wage increases were seen, very low unemployment across the board. So the economy, up until COVID at least, was a plus. And even if it's a short-term boost from the things he did with the tax cuts and the deregulation, overall you still have to admit that the economy was in a good spot, minus a few hiccups like the China tariffs, which hurt farmers and steel workers and some manufacturing stuff. But that was pretty brief. Overall, solid on the economy up until COVID. Another thing I want to give him credit for, which I thought was great, that the right, specifically a lot of his supporters, don't like giving him credit for, talking about, is Operation Warp Speed. Operation Warp Speed, if you weren't familiar, you weren't paying much attention during COVID, it was a thing that the United States government did for pharmaceutical companies during COVID that was big funding and encouragement to work together and increase manufacturing for a COVID vaccine. It was to help them do testing faster, quicker development, um, resources so that they could mass manufacture vaccines, and it was help for multiple vaccine brands and pharmaceutical companies. Um, it was big for science and for medical and vaccine testing, and it helped us get a safe and quite effective vaccines out, multiple, in a very short time frame. If you'll remember back then, I think they interviewed, I don't remember who it was, I think it was Kamala who they were talking to about when Trump said this vaccine's going to come out fast. I think they asked her if she would take the vaccine. And she was like, well, I want to make sure it's safe first. And then, like, Biden, too, during one of their, I think during one of the debates or whatever, was saying that Trump's timeline was unrealistic and we weren't going to get a safe vaccine out that fast. Well, it turned out, thanks to Project Warp Speed and the great people who worked on the vaccine, it did get out incredibly fast and it did prove to be widely effective with mostly minor side effects. There was not not much negatives from it other than what a normal vaccine would have. So huge props for him, even if a large portion of his base was kind of anti-vax. I remember some of his rallies where he talked about it, getting the shot. They booed him. I remember he talked about it a couple times. He really wanted to take credit for it because it is a great thing he did, but his crowd wasn't too into it. But I give him huge props for that. Well done with Project Warp Speed. Now, as for the bad, we had some worsened relationships when it came to foreign policy. He didn't have the best relationships with some of our allies. It was definitely a bit deteriorating. He just didn't get along that well, maybe seemed too pushy. Some of them felt he wasn't informed enough when it came to policies or understanding. And so it definitely divided our relationships globally a bit. Also, his presidency definitely further divided our country. While the media played a big role in it overall, he definitely didn't help. His public comments continue to be quite negative about all of his opposition. He wanted to take credit for a lot of things, even if it was like a Democrat idea that got passed under him or something. He wanted to take credit for it, or if something went wrong, he wanted to blame somebody for it. It was definitely a bad presidency for unity, and definitely divided America even more. Um, One of the things the right loves to talk about is the left-wing violence that happened with the riots and stuff that happened. Well, your left was violent too. Whenever January 6th or something gets brought up, but what they're not all that encouraged to also bring up is that happened during Trump's presidency. Like, are there things he could have done to tone it down? But instead, some of his comments maybe added fuel to the fire. And same with the right-wing media, um, added fuel to that fire for division and any sort of political violence or riots, whatnot, that happened during his term. And then the last thing that I think he didn't do good on is his public comments on COVID. He repeatedly talked about how it was no big deal. We were going to get through it, a couple weeks. It'll be a month. It'll be 2 months. He thought it would be incredibly short. And he kept saying, I got Project Warp Speed, which is going to get this vaccine out, and then we'll be just fine. But we don't really need to worry about it before the vaccine. Which, just the fact that he wanted to do Operation Warp Speed, he was in contact with scientists and the data. He saw the data on how serious it was. It showed private conversations that he had where he talked about how serious COVID was. And so he wasn't upfront with it with the public, which he said in one of those private conversations that he didn't want to cause a panic, which maybe that's a good thing. But also, if you were a little bit more honest about it, maybe the right and the MAGA folk and the Trump folk and the Republicans would have also taken COVID a little bit more seriously. Even if, in hindsight, things like the lockdowns and school from home turned out to be like not good, the if he had brought it to be as serious as it was, I think there could have been more unity around COVID instead of less divisiveness about COVID if he just spoke on it in public the way he did in private about how serious we should take it, how important he thought the vaccine was from the get-go. That's it for Trump. For Biden, I thought he had a great recovery to the economy post the little mini recession we had in 2022. Now, they didn't want to call it a recession. I remember multiple times like, oh, we avoided the recession. No, by every measure of economics, it was a recession. They just didn't want to say it, probably because, yeah, they didn't want to cause a panic. They didn't want to stop spending. They didn't want people to do withdrawals from the banks or the stock markets. They didn't want to cause a panic that would hurt the economy and maybe turn it from a mini recession into a larger recession. But it was definitely a mini recession. But there was a great recovery from it. The United States actually recovered back better than anywhere else in the world. We got inflation back under control. Um, Unemployment, amazing, very low. Um, it was just overall a very good recovery. Even though people are definitely hurting more economically, which is probably why Trump won, probably the biggest issue because the cost of goods is more. If you still compare the United States to other places in the world, we did a better job at bouncing back. Um, the infrastructure law, as it's called, infrastructure bill, the law, um, improved water, getting rid of copper pipes, lead, money for roads, high-speed internet, which is definitely a must in this day and age. Bridge repairs. It was like one of the biggest infrastructure things in, at least in my lifetime. Um, Very important, I think. Very needed. Um, Helps the entire country. I think that was great. Um, then you had also the CHIPS Act, which is more technology and semiconductors specifically to be made in America. Now, that's obviously good for American businesses, and it's also good for national security as we're bringing more technology and chips to be made here. So we don't have to worry about, relations with, certain foreign nations that we're worried about for security reasons. Um, but overall, CHIPS Act, very good. Now, Biden, for the bad, he claimed when he was first running that he was going to be the president for unifying America. Let's be honest, that definitely didn't happen. If anything, the division maybe even grew from the Trump presidency. I remember the not my president stuff. Yes, the left was doing it during Trump. It continued heavily during Biden. Anything that went wrong on the gas pumps, you had the I did that stickers. Like, he did not unify America, and it definitely was just as divided as during Trump's presidency, if not a bit more. Um, while I think some of the spending he did and the bills that he wanted passed were good overall, the timing wasn't so great because a lot of like the infrastructure bill happened like right after his presidency, right? And it was a bipartisan, but we may have taken a harder economic hit post-COVID due to all of our spending at the end of COVID and right after COVID. There was a ton of spending and, you know, trying to get everything back on track, and that might have just made the fall a little bit harder because of it. Um, he also claimed that he was going to be a transitional president or a one-term president. And then he hit us with a, nope, I'm just kidding. I'm running again. I beat Trump. I can beat him again. Well, then the debate happened, which I think is where the whole world that watched it or saw clips of it realized, well, the lights are on for him, but I don't think anybody's home. And even though on the other side, the debate was also a tragedy, the lights were on and you weren't maybe sure who was home, but somebody was home. They might have been a little crazy or repeated the same talking points they have for, the last 8, 10, 12 years, but somebody was home. And that, I think, was enough that shortly after that, or a little while down the road, after saying, yes, I'm going to stay in, he decided to bow out. He shouldn't have even been running in the first place. The Democrats could have had a actual primary and let the voters decide who they wanted to run for president. But since he didn't do that, he said, well, I'm out. Here's Kamala, basically. She's going to be the one running for president because there wasn't much time. And it's a face that had been in the spotlight and people knew. And so we got Kamala, and that's who you had to vote for if you wanted to vote Democrat. And further to that, tied is Kamala wasn't very well liked, and she was directly tied to his administration, which was already pretty unfavorable overall, just because of the economic conditions. Whether that was, it probably wasn't their fault for the most part, but she was still tied to that, and that's how Americans saw it. Lastly, I will not pardon my son. That is what Biden said many times, repeated over and over. I won't pardon my son. Justice is for everyone. I don't want people to think they're above the law. And then at the end, he did the whole, well, I am pardoning my son right after Thanksgiving or whatever. Probably was an interesting conversation at the table over turkey where his son's like, Dad, I don't want to go to jail. And he's like, oh, well, you know what? I think Trump's going to pardon a lot of people, like some of them January 6ers and everything else. So you know what? I will pardon you. Now, I don't really have a problem with the pardon itself. In fact, I'm sure a lot of people get away with the crimes that they ended up tying to him, like the being on drugs and owning a firearm or purchasing a firearm, right? Or lying on the sheet about not taking drugs and purchasing a firearm. That I don't have a problem with. The problem is that he repeatedly stated that he would not do it and that he was above it. Like if you want to take the moral high ground or a law and order approach, you need to stick with it, and he did. And then lastly, I guess the thing that I'd say is negative for both of them is the getting our soldiers out of Iraq. While that was good, or out of the Middle East, while that was good and important, I tie that to both of them because Trump made the deal that said we're going to pull out. Here's how it's going to go. And then it happened during Biden's presidency, and it did not go well. And while Biden was in charge for it, he takes some responsibility for it. Trump made the deal about how it was going to happen, when it was going to happen, how it was going to work, and they obviously didn't follow through with the deal with Trump. So there you have it. That's some things I liked and thought was good for each, and some that I thought was pretty bad. All right, so now you can see I've pulled up this graphic. This is a political spectrum. I've kind of labeled it out. Slightly different than some of the other ones that you can find online, but for the most part, aside from my descriptors and whatnot, it's mostly what you'll see, pretty similar. So first of all, I feel like most Americans, even if the media doesn't want you to think so these days, still fall in this area. And this is the area where politics were basically my entire time growing up. Right around here, we had center and then, moderates of each political party. As such, I've labeled them with, people who I feel like sit there. Clinton, Biden, Obama in the corporate / moderate / capitalist Democrats, corporate moderate Republicans, Bush, Romney, McCain. I'll go over why I called them corporate / capitalist instead of just a moderate or, the center left, center right type things. It's because everybody in these categories basically helps capitalism, helps business. They're all pro business. With the right, you have your tax cuts and your deregulation to help business. On the left, you have things like subsidies, tax credits, interest-free loans, grants, etc. Right? Like as an example, Elon Musk used to be over in this area. He got government contracts, EV tax credits, subsidies, really helped his businesses grow. They're like, hey, you're doing this for the environment. Oh, you're doing this for business. You're getting these workers. We're going to scratch your back. Left helps Elon Musk. His companies grow. He becomes big. Now he's over here, right? He wants the tax cuts, the tax and the deregulation to help his business now. Makes sense. Both parties help business. No matter who wins from these parties, business typically wins. It's why you see giant donations in lobbyists during election time. And it's usually to both parties. Certain PACs and whatnot might donate to a specific party, but overall, most big businesses and corporations kind of donate to both parties because they know that they're going to get help in some form, no matter who wins in there. Now, the red line kind of represents where I was growing up. Slight right, thinking kind of fiscally conservative while socially liberal. As I got older, went through college, whatnot, I moved a little further left. Now, you might hear, oh, that's because you got indoctrinated in college, as one of my favorite things that I always hear. No, actually, most people grow more liberal if they go to college or they go out in the world because they meet more people. And when you meet more people from different backgrounds, you kind of tend to have empathy or understanding of where they come from, or to find out they're very similar to you, even though they're different. So the reason that, socially liberal people who attend university, where they're getting people from, you know, all different cultures and parts of the world, different backgrounds, you're around them. So you kind of know what they're like, how they act, and maybe you'll hear their stories and understand them better, which the left definitely does at trying to be a more understanding party for more people. Now that can run into problems as you go further left, so I'll start over here now. The farther left you go, so like far left, the socialist Democrats, you got, like your AOC, your Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. When you get over here, you start angering the businesses, right? Because you want high taxes on them while also not giving them as much as the corporate Democrats will. And what happens when you start angering the businesses is, well, you might have businesses leaving America for another country. Oh, we can get cheaper labor here. We can get cheaper products here without being taxed as much. So we're going to make our products somewhere else. So when you go over here, you might see a dip in the economy. Sure, worker conditions might be better. They might try and be helping more total people, but the economy overall is, I mean, as the right often complains about, it might suffer a bit more. And then you also have social programs, right, which can be great, can help a lot of people, very necessary for some people. And for the most part, aren't the current state of our social programs aren't really a problem. But the more you have, obviously, the more people who can take advantage of the system. There's always going to be people looking to take advantage of a handout system that exists. There's handouts, it isn't just a left-wing thing, right? Like when Trump was president during COVID, we had a PPP loans, stuff like that. And, it came out information that, not everybody that was getting those loans or were forgiven and whatnot were justified in how they were doing it, or they weren't using the funds the way they were supposed to be appropriated. So I mean, you can get free money over here too, and have people take advantage of the system. It's just a more common thing with more social programs. And then the radical left, which again, this is actually a radical left and a radical right. I know earlier in the video, even I used the term radical right. Like I'm falling for the own media bias that it tries to play and say that, oh, these people are the radical left or these people are the far right, right? Like that's not how it actually is. So like a radical left would be like communism, where even if you work 10 times harder, you're not being treated any better than somebody who, is a 1x or less than 1x, barely working. So then as you go to the right, here is what I'd consider the far right. The thing is, I believe the right has moved more than the left has, because this is kind of where the right is overall right now. It's their current candidate. I'd say most of MAGA and Trump kind of fits into this box or close to this box. It's American capitalists, big, big business help, huge deregulation, nationalists, isolationists, some nativism in there. And these bottom ones, I've got a clip for it, but my next video is going to be on Elon Musk, who's kind of been at battle against a decent chunk of MAGA lately. I'll be doing a video on that where I go much more in depth to it, but it has to do with immigration, right? And there's a lot of nativism and isolationist views that want just America, just Americans to be prosperous and not others. And so I'm going to play that clip. Let's see, open this up, close that. All right, here we go.
I do believe there will be a rational immigration policy eventually passed. I think there's going to have to be some time. What's interesting about our country, if you study history, is that there are some isms that occasionally pop up. One is isolationism, and its evil twin protectionism, and its evil triplet nativism. So if you study the 20s, for example, there was an American First policy that said, who cares what happens in Europe? Well, what happened in Europe mattered eventually because of World War II. There was Smoot-Hawley, which was a part of an economic policy, which basically said we don't want trade. In other words, let's throw up barriers. And there was an immigration policy that I think during this period argued we had too many Jews and too many Italians, therefore we should have no immigrants. And my point to you is we've been through this kind of period of isolationism, protectionism, nativism. I'm a little concerned that we may be going through the same period. I hope that these isms...
So there you have it from that clip, right? George Bush, who I remember back when I was growing up, a lot of people believed that he was an unintelligent president, you know, that he didn't know his stuff enough because he stumbled over words or said silly things. And wow, after 4 years of Trump and 4 years of Biden and soon to be Trump again, I think pretty much everybody can agree George Bush actually knew his stuff pretty well when it came to policy and history and stuff like that. He was actually a decently well-spoken guy that knew his stuff who occasionally just stumbled. But he raises a great point there, okay? There's a lot of problems that can occur by being in this area, being ultra-nationalistic or isolationist or nativism. He didn't go into all the details, but basically, America's economy is as great and as big as it is because of how globally we are, how global America is, how big our military is, how many people we help out, how many people we have alliances with. Our military bases are across the world. We have we've helped countries across the world with aid. We've helped countries across the world with trade. The US dollar is as valuable as it is because we are a global country that focuses on global things. It's not just a nativism idea. It's not just, oh, we care about our country and only our country. If we did, well, we wouldn't be the world economy. We wouldn't be, the currency that every country wants. It just wouldn't happen. So that's why there can be some problems in this. And, GW in that was talking about he was a little worried we were moving back toward that. And I mean, I'm sure if he could revisit those same points, he'd say, we're definitely going too far in that direction. But again, I'll touch more on that in my next video about Alon and his fight over immigration. Then over here we have the radical right or the fascists and Nazis, which again this time the left wing media is saying that. But to be honest, even most of MAGA, Trump, etc., is still in this area. There might be a worry that they try to push farther right, or the right's already moved a bit more than the left, so there's a worry that it moves more. And not to say that there aren't fascist people and Nazis, and you can see them as on YouTube and political commentators and marching through our streets carrying their flags and whatnot. They vote this way, but they're not equivalent, right? There's nut jobs and radicals way out there. And hopefully we can avoid going either direction too far. But anyways, that basically sums up this graph for now. Next on, I will be going into some of the topics or, like political views that I hold. So right before I give my positions, I just want to preface it with saying politicians oftentimes get flack for shifting an opinion on an issue or changing their position, even dramatically sometimes. And unless you're shifting your view like constantly within a short period of time, I think overall it is a good thing to be willing to change your mind on an issue or shift your position slightly based on new information, new life experiences, experiences from those around you that you hear firsthand. Or if, for example, you hear, politicians are there to represent their constituents. If their constituents write in and do a bunch of phone calls or, talk at like a town hall type thing about something that they feel the politician is wrong about, or they feel the politician really should support or shouldn't support, it's a good thing to be at least somewhat malleable on some issues. It's fine that everybody's going to have some that are so entrenched and important to their life that they keep, which a lot of mine I have kept, but there are definitely plenty also that I've changed my opinion on, or at least shifted my opinion on it to see both good and bad. But that is a perfectly reasonable thing, and I think it's better when people are willing to be, you know, a little more malleable when it comes to certain topics. All right, now I am going to go over some of my beliefs, some popular political positions, the resort topics, many of which will come up in future videos. I'm going to try and go through it quick because honestly, a lot of them will probably come up and get more fleshed out in future videos. Um, but this is how I feel and kind of where I sit. I'll go across it on the political spectrum as well. All right, so first off, I'm pro guns, which is largely a right thing. Some left, like you even heard Kamala and Tim Walz talk about it. They were pro guns, but either way, kind of on this way. I do think there should be some form of control. Small amount, but there should be some. I think it's important that you keep guns away from mentally unstable and criminals. Be it if somebody has a violent crime on their record, they should not be able to own a gun. I know some states have that, same with the mental health thing. But in some states, it is way too easy to get a gun, or way too easy to just send somebody in the store to get a gun for you. And then that person, if you end up using the gun in a negative way, they don't get charged. So there's not like a deterrent for it, right? Like if every time that somebody got a gun that somebody else bought for them or left unsecured that was taken from them because it's unsecured, if they got punished, we would definitely see less gun violence and gun crime, I think, in the United States. By that's a simple minor amount of control. I think it's important, but I don't think we need too much more than that. At least I would hope we don't need much more than that. Then I'll jump over to the left. It's mostly left, but I'd say it's a decent amount of right now too, which is gay marriage. I think everybody has a right to marriage, to be happy. Um, I would say, yeah, it goes into the right nowadays for the most part too. Most people don't have a problem with gay marriage. Trans issues have kind of taken the place of where gay marriage and stuff was when I was younger, as the more radical thing. That not everybody does support certain things of that, but gay marriage is mostly pretty far. And the ones who don't really support gay marriage, it's usually because of religious reasons, or it's because they say stuff like, "Oh, we've gotten too woke. There's look at all this, pride stuff in Target or Walmart, or they have a month, and so they went from like, yeah, I was totally cool with gay stuff, but now they've taken it too far, so now I don't support them anymore. It's too in my face or whatever. But that's just silly. Gay marriage, I think, is pretty awesome. Here's probably my farthest right belief, which is I think there should be less agencies, government agencies, departments, and spending on a lot of federal government agencies, like talking like the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, the FCC, um, the IRS, the DOJ, with how many things they try and punish that actually amounts to nothing. I don't think is worth it. I think there's no reason for these to be as well funded as they are or as big as they are, because you have like, let's use the DOJ as an example, right? Like the Trump, all the money, time, resources they spent charging Trump with certain crimes. He gets voted in president. They're like, oh, I guess we're just going to drop everything. All for a waste. Same with Hunter Biden. They spent time, resources, money to charge him through the DOJ, and Biden pardoned him. A waste. And then with the other agencies I mentioned, right? Like, if you look into how much like banks, hedge funds, like market related stuff, like with companies that break rules or banks that break rules or illegal trade type stuff, the punishments they get for the crimes they commit and the amount of money they make is minuscule. Most of them get fined far less than what they made off of breaking the law or breaking the regulation or the rules. They're only allowed so many strikes like in a certain period of time, right? But they can literally hit like their strike limit and they get fined next to nothing for breaking the rules to make money or to screw over a large group of people. It's just it seems like a complete waste that they're not doing their job. And if you wanted those to start doing their job, you'd need to go like over here. But again, I've talked about, they might fund them more and turn them into an actually useful government agency. But as it stands, they're really not nearly as useful as how much money we're spending into them. Very big waste that they're not doing their job. I think might as well cut the funding or cut some of the size of them, or get rid of certain ones entirely. Um, Next, legal marijuana is one that's come up in a lot of states recently. I think that is great. It's good for tax revenue. It's been studied for ages now. It's healthier than alcohol. It'll help clear, like it's already been decriminalized federally, but it helps clear out the prisons of like nonviolent offenders. Again, it's like, you don't, if as long as you're not driving a car or being a danger to somebody else because of marijuana, it shouldn't be a crime. You can do it in your home, whatever. Don't get behind the wheel. I think legal marijuana is great. All states should have it. it's going to help your tax revenue. Um, Back over to the right a bit, and probably the center too. I'm very against DEI. I think it's pretty silly, kind of similar to what affirmative action was. I think it's important that you get the most qualified people, regardless. I don't think you need to slap on a band-aid to say, hey, look, we got to help this out because they weren't treated fairly in the past. I think it's very important that the most qualified people are where they need to be, um, regardless. Uh, I am pro-immigration overall. I think immigration is very important, legal immigration especially. We are a country built on immigration. Immigration is fantastic for the economy. It is literally one of the biggest drivers of instant economic growth. Immigration is. I'll go into that way more because I'm going to do a video on Elon Musk's battle with a lot of MAGA over immigration. And while I don't agree with how it's implemented fully sometimes, I think legal immigration is great. Our country does have a problem with asylum seekers and the process for people who show up and are just like, I want to claim asylum. That's not the same as legal immigration. It is definitely different. There is a problem with the asylum seeking process and how easily certain people can seek asylum and lie about that. But immigration overall, standard immigration, good. I'm against the PC culture or politically correctness, which I think quite a few people are sick of that by now. Um, but that is certainly like a far left thing, and it has went way too far. I'm going to touch on this more in another video too. I think it's one of the main reasons that Trump initially had all the support he did, because he was certainly not a politically correct candidate. He said whatever, and some people really respected that, even if he was kind of offensive, and it did show, character flaws with how far he took it to not be courteous and say the right thing. But PC culture went way too far. Again, I'll touch on that more in another video. I am pro-choice. I believe a woman should get to choose. Um, I don't really see it up for debate. I can see some people trying to claim that it's like, religious type thing, but I don't think the government should be involved in making that decision. The government shouldn't be involved at all. I think that's an important decision for a family, or, friends to talk about together. I don't think it's a position that the government should be involved in, especially when you have states that aren't allowing for exceptions, for things like rape and danger to a mother's life. Uh, it's just, if you're a state that has anti-abortion and you also aren't doing the exceptions, you're evil in my mind. You can't claim to be pro-life while you're not supporting a mother's life or a mother's mental health, which might, be her life, or it might endanger that child in the future. If you force a mother who got raped, has a mental health breakdown after the kid's born, now you're endangering the child and the mother, not just the child. Um, Anyways, then moving on. This one's probably the farthest left, but I do think a lot more people are starting to jump on board, especially after the United Healthcare thing. I think single payer healthcare or healthcare for all Americans through one agency or whatever would be good. It literally saves money. You can look up the data on how much we spend on healthcare in America compared to other countries per person, and we are paying more for healthcare than all other developed first world nations in the world, many of which have government healthcare. Almost all other first world nations have government healthcare, and it's cheaper per person than our healthcare. Our healthcare is outrageously priced. Our insurance companies look to make money for themselves. The whole UNC thing, I will probably do a video on that. It won't be one of the first couple, but I probably will do one, as long as that keeps remaining in the news and getting talked about. I am moving on. I'm pro free trade, or at least close to free trade. Targeted tariffs can be useful, especially if it's for products that are made in America already. If a product is highly made in America, I think a targeted tariff on that product from another nation is fine. there's a lot of products and base manufacturing that we don't do in America for good reason. Our workers are, even our low skill workers are more educated and higher skilled than a lot of the countries that we do get our base manufacturing from. We don't need to bring back sewing shoes for like Nike. We don't need to bring back like a lot of stuff. A lot of companies in America that do import from outside of America do so for good reasons, largely. I think tariffs are pretty terrible overall, unless it's targeted to specifically help something we do make here, or it's like a national security thing, like the CHIPS Act I mentioned earlier for Biden. Having more chips made in America, awesome. All right, like health and safety. For this one, I love the line, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, I include a lot of this with that life part of that statement by Thomas Jefferson. Wrote that in the Declaration of Independence. Our food in America is crap. RFK Jr. talks about it a lot. He's going to work with Trump. While I think RFK Jr. is a little nutty, I do agree with him that our food is pretty crap. America has over 40% obesity, one of the highest in the world. Again, we're a developed nation. We shouldn't be having that type of issue. Same with like heart disease and other issues. Our country and our life expectancy, we land like 48th in life expectancy, um, which we're supposed to be the greatest country in the world, and we're not stacking up when it comes to like health and safety. And I also think that those numbers are also a healthcare issue because of our healthcare system. I think if more people could get in um, and not fear healthcare costs as much, or it would help all these things, right? No matter what metric or study or data you look at, America is ranked horribly on safety. We're literally near the bottom for developed, economically stable countries when it comes to safety. That's like just crime, um, stuff like that. Like a lot of that probably comes down to how divided America has become, how underdeveloped certain parts of like cities are. Like the wealth divide is a big part of safety as well. Um, more crime is committed by the poorest people in America. It's just a fact, and that's a problem. Our country should be safer. That about sums it up. So I'm just going to end this with I will be continuing to make videos. They will be covering like current events, major political news events, world issues, U.S. issues specifically. Um, I was going to do my first video on the Elon Musk war with MAGA over immigration and H-1B visa specifically, but kind of I'll incorporate immigration as a whole into it. But that was gonna be my first video, but in fact, I think that'll be my next one. I think my first video, I'm actually gonna briefly talk a little bit more, which I did at the start, into why the right has gone further right and why America has kind of moved more to the right in recent times. I think that'll be my first video. I've already got it basically all set up. I just need to record. And then my second video will probably be the Elon Musk war with MAGA. And then future videos that I have kind of floating around my head and ideas for, but haven't really gotten started on other than just reading about it and researching, is the healthcare in America, which, like I said, the United Healthcare thing with Luigi, the CEO shooter guy, Russia and Ukraine. That conflict I have researched pretty well, and I feel like I have a decent grasp of. I try to be quite well informed on that one, and I have been keeping up with it for, I think that war's been going on now for like 3 years or maybe even a little bit longer. But so that'll be a future video. I'll probably, for that video, I'll probably watch like other videos and react to it or point out things that other people are saying because they're also very well researched or knowledgeable about the topic. And then the Matt Gaetz ethics report that got released. I haven't seen much of that lately, but I do feel like it's worth talking about. Especially considering he was going to be nominated for Donald Trump's head of the DOJ, and I think with everything in there, that it will be important to talk about, as he was not good. But that's it. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed. Feel free to subscribe or follow or whatever. Thanks.